Okay, good afternoon, everybody. My name is Dr. Danny Marks. I'm an assistant professor at Dublin City University in Ireland. I'm the moderator for this panel. I've been doing a lot of research on environmental politics and policy in the region with a focus on air pollution. So before we start, I'd like to introduce our four speakers today. So let's start with Kun Ekachai, Loja Napiwat, who leads the integrated approaches to air quality management and climate change project in Southeast Asia at GIZ. And then Cosima Star over here, she provides policy advice and consulting for the Switch project, which is funded by the EU. And then Kun Winarin, who's the co-founder of the Thai Clean Air Network. She's previously worked for the World Bank. And then Kun Ken Tamanan Rocks, I hope I got that right, who's chief of party for an FHI 360 project, which focuses on climate change and environment. So welcome all. So this is going to be kind of like an interview style panel. So each speaker will have about 5 minutes. I'll ask a round of questions. Please try to stick to time because we have a lot of ground to cover. So just as a brief introduction, I think many of you are aware about how important air pollution is as an issue. It claims an estimated 7 million lives annually. It's the largest external threat to human health, much higher than, say, smoking, dirty, unclean water, and alcohol. And it's particularly, most of the deaths are in this region. They estimate over 4 million of the deaths. Unfortunately, we're in home right now in a place which was one of the top 10 most polluted cities earlier this year. And Chiang Mai in the north also reached that unfortunate distinction. Estimates are about 50,000 Thais die per year from air pollution, and shortens about 2 years of life. And there's many varied sources of air pollution: transport, industry, agriculture, forest fires, and energy. And of course, businesses have a big role to play in this issue. And there's also the idea that there's a right to clean air. And so this panel explores this right and what businesses can do in terms of supply chains and other issues related to air pollution. So let's go ahead and get started. So I'll start with Kun Wina. So just to start with, why do you think it's important we are here today discussing the interlinkages between clean air and climate change?
Thanks for your question, Danny. The issues are actually quite intertwined. I think most people in the room would probably know that. About half of the impacts from shortened air pollutants are responsible for half of global warming. There was a meeting last week. The Climate Change and Clean Air Coalition had the annual conference held here, actually. And one of the things that they concluded was that if air pollution is actually not dealt with, a lot of the major tipping points will be achieved. And these are irreversible tipping points in terms of changes on climate. So the issues are very, very intertwined. And I think there's a lot of benefits from attacking those issues together. The unfortunate part, I think, with air pollution, though, is that the focus in terms of the supply of funding in this space is extremely limited. So according to the Clean Air Fund, only 2% of global climate finance today, even though there's a lot of money in global climate financing, targets air pollution specifically. So it makes this issue extremely difficult. Coming to this region is the world's most polluted region in the world, and Thailand has quite a difficult problem because we are a middle income country. In the language or lingo of the World Bank and the UN, we're no longer a Part 2 country, which means we don't qualify for a lot of bilateral and multilateral funding. And therefore, in this space, it's extremely difficult to obtain funding. And I think what's unfortunate is that people don't see the interlink between what's happening here in Thailand and the regional impacts, because the impacts that it's having is quite extensive. I think Danny alluded to the links to big businesses, what's happening transboundary, and those has huge implication for the region, and not just people within Thailand, but also across the borders as well. I hope I answered that question.
So a couple minutes if you want to.
Oh, okay.
Don't worry.
Okay.
I mean, you talked about, I mean, you've been working on legislation for clean air.
Yeah.
Maybe you could briefly speak about that and why do you think it's important in relation to business and human rights?
Oh, okay. So the Thailand Clean Air Net was established about 5 years ago. And in early of last year, we submitted the first citizen-led clean air legislation to the Thai Parliament. This legislation is extremely comprehensive and it addresses the various incentive structures needed to move economic actors to do what's needed to bring about clean air. Specifically, there's a lot of economic incentives embedded in this legislation. It also deals with a lot of the issues linked with the inability of the government agencies to work together. Silos in Thailand are very, very airtight. Agencies don't work across boundaries at all. And when you're dealing with cross-boundary issues as big as air pollution, it means that these issues aren't properly addressed. And that's an important part of all of this. And also, I think a critical part of all this, linking back to the question about human rights too, is that we take a rights-based approach, because ultimately it is about the right to clean air, which is ultimately about the right to life itself. And it's endorsed as a universal right by the UN already, quite recently. So I think that puts it at a different level. Globally, when you look at movements on clean air around the world, it is all successful movements to address this problem has come about with the passage of sensible legislation that addresses the root causes of this problem. And it is not the only solution, but it has to start with having sensible legislation, and everything else comes into play. And all of it actually is driven, when you look into it, whether it doesn't matter whether you talk about a country that's predicated on the principles of democracy or not, all the successful movements have actually come about from people pushing on this very strongly and collectively, that this has been successful. I hope I've answered that question.
Yeah. Okay, thanks, Mina. Let's move on to Ken now. You've done significant work in this region on decarbonization through solar and other large-scale renewable projects. Could you speak about your experience in the energy sector and if there's any impact regarding air quality improvement as an outcome of your previous work?
Sure. Thank you, Danny. Actually, I'm wearing multiple hats. One of the hats that I'm still wearing is that I'm working for the private sector. I'm working, I think, for the past 15 years in the renewable energy sector. Back then, I think renewable energy in general was not even bankable. Solar, for example, was so expensive. But right now, wind and solar are probably the cheapest energy on earth. And it used to be like called for a reason, alternative energy, but right now I think is probably going mainstream. Let me share with you the interesting story. In 2020, I led the team to develop one of the largest solar power plant in Cambodia, the country that rely heavily on the coal-fired power plant. This project was marked as the lowest power price ever recorded, so it's even cheaper than coal-fired power plant. Interestingly, and this is one of many projects that could help to support the Cambodian government to stop building the new coal-fired power plant. And you may wonder, like, what bring the success to this project? How can we achieve the power price at this level, like even cheaper than coal? Because a lot of people felt that the renewable energy would be expensive. Like back then, it's not even bankable, as I mentioned. Like, how can we bring down the pricing? So for this project, I think there are several things that support on the project itself. One of the major things that helped was that for the technological wise, I think we are at the stage that solar efficiency is at very high level. It's higher than ever. And for like we have the technology for track the sun, like we call it solar tracker. So if the sun goes to the west, the solar panel moves to the west as well. We have the technology that we can absorb the sunlight both way, from the above and from the below. And people would like scratching their head, like how would that even possible? Like right now, there is the technology called the bifacial solar. So essentially you have like a double phases solar. You can absorb the sunlight from the above, direct from the sun, and down below when the sunlight hit the ground, there's the reflection. So we can absorb the additional energy from below as well. So these are the technology that we are having right now, and we are using that in Cambodia project as well. Second, we got a lot of support from the development banks and the government as well. I think like these kind of project, these like kind of impact that we envision, we need like a commensurate and concert efforts from various stakeholders. Like this particular project, for example, we got a support from Asian Development Bank, ADB. We've got the support from IFC, International Finance Corporation, under the World Bank. We got the support from JICA from Japan, from Exim Bank from Thailand, from Norfund from Norway, and of course from Cambodian government as well. So these are the kind of lineup that I think we would need to create like this kind of impact. And to your another questions on the impact measurement for the solar or the renewable energy power plant, I think the impact measurement is measured by the amount of carbon emission reduction for this particular project. Is the so-called 80 megawatt solar power plant. So essentially we anticipate to reduce around 3 million tons of carbon emission throughout the life of the project. So I think these are something that we are envisioning that we could scale to the other project, to the other country as well, since I think it's no longer expensive. I think it's achievable, it's bankable, and it's doable. So I think these are something that we are trying to promote in the other countries, including some countries that their need for more renewable energy as well. Thank you.
Okay, thanks, Ken. Let's move on to Ekachai now. So could you please provide us with a brief overview of the work that you're doing with GIZ, particularly at the ASEAN level? Please talk us through the key motivation behind revitalizing ASEAN-wide air pollution mitigation strategies, and also as a relationship between your project and climate change.
Okay, yeah, thank you for the question. And for the GIZ, I would like to tell you a story like this. When the GIZ headquarters in Germany look at this region, so all of the project work with the climate change. Okay, we work with the energy sector, transportation, agriculture, even the policy, but no project that work directly to the air pollution or clean air. So that's why this topic is like really interesting for us. We need to, it's a link between air pollution and climate change is linked together. But when we separate climate change, we can see like it's like a slightly effect in the future. But clean air or air pollution is affect directly to our health because we breathe every day, right? So that's why this is just the start of the project. And now GIZ have a 1.5 year project start last August until next January. It's kind of like a seed funding project for 1.5 years. Work for the pre-study that what is the gap or opportunity that we can work in this region related to the air quality management and also climate change. But we will touch more in the clean air and air pollution or air quality management. We have a many stakeholder like Thai Clean Air Network, SEI, IRD, also the institute in this region also. And we just have a small workshop last week, 2 weeks ago, actually in Chiang Mai. But why we have that workshop? Because of when you might know that we have a really kind of serious situation or this issue during the past 3-4 months, right? This year, even worse than last year. And the Thai government, Myanmar, and Laos, would like to solve this problem together. So they have a meeting between trilateral, these 3 countries only, and try to solve this problem. And then that's why 2 weeks ago, we GSS kind of like a moderator of this workshop for them to find out what is a super short term and short term, medium term, and long term plan. What is a super short term one is like within 8 months, because the haze pollution will come back again next January, 100% or next February, right? This is super short term. What is a super short term for these 3 countries? And short term is within 2025. So what is short term? And 2028 is a medium term, and 2030 is a long term. We found that these 3 countries, I would like to say that Myanmar and Laos, they still lack of the capacity to solve this problem. So they need help, actually. They still like a really new, because the participant to attend this workshop is representative from the pollution control department of these 3 countries. And they still stick with the monitoring. Not even mitigation or adaptation. They still find out how to monitor it. But actually we have a lot of technology like satellite and micrometers that we can share information to them, right? But maybe in short term, I can say that we still have no hope to solve this problem. But we try to drive them that how to solve it in this 8 months, to find the best way. At least right now, okay, these 3 countries, they have a commitment together already that, okay, Thailand will share some technology to them. And we know that the root cause of this is come from the supply chain. I think you will mention later, right? About supply chain. How we solve this supply chain layer, we have haze problem because of the agriculture supply chain. We import like agriculture product from our neighbor, but do we have a really good supply chain management already of this? Actually, we have private sector in Thailand. They try to do something, but only them, maybe it's not enough. Maybe we need the contribution from our neighbor also. Okay, I stop with this first.
Okay, thank you, Akachai. Which go on to Cosima. So can you please introduce the Switch Asia project and tell us how it's related to addressing air pollution?
Yes, sure. So Switch Asia is the longest running EU program on SDG 12, sustainable consumption and production in the Asian region. So it was launched in 2007, and its budget so far has been more than 350 million euros. It is divided into 2 components. One is a grant component where there are smaller grants. I think now more than 131 of these projects have been running that target specific sectors in specific countries or regions to improve SME contribution to solution finding with regard to SCP. And the other component is the policy support component, which is the one that I work for, where the prime motivation is to improve SDG 12 monitoring and also implementation in the region in direct cooperation with the governments. So co-creating the policies that are needed to make SDG 12 implementation successful. And interestingly enough, clean air is part of SDG 12. It's mentioned as part of the indicator 12.4, where it's about reducing the pollution of air, water, and soil. But this is not the only interesting fact about this. It's also the only time that it's explicitly mentioned in the SDGs. And so while we have SDG 6 and SDG 14 that also tackle water quite comprehensively, and we have SDG 15, for example, that targets soil, life on Earth, and also other SDGs, I would say most prominently is really the mentioning in SDG 12.4. And I can tell you from my implementation experience, it is not a priority issue because SDG 12 in itself is already overladen with important issues. And you know, anything kind of related to material consumption, business behavior, things like corporate reporting, all of this is part of SDG 12. And so air pollution is more or less an afterthought. And of course, it's tangentially really relevant because, yeah, as my colleagues mentioned before, of course, there's also this clear link to climate change, right? And this one, of course, is much more prominent in the other SDGs. But I think as a topic in itself, it would warrant much more attention also by an important commitment like the SDGs. And it's sad to say that this kind of lack of prioritization also shows up in our work, where out of the 130 grants, probably around 3, maybe 5 had air pollution also as an explicitly mentioned topic. And one of them I can just briefly reference this one because it's actually really interesting. It's a project in Mongolia where the implementing organizations, so these organizations are both from Mongolia as well as from the European Union, they tackle energy efficiency in poor households because there's this Gare region in Ulaanbaatar, of course, being one of the most, let's say, climatically challenged points on Earth, with temperatures plus 40 degrees in summer, minus 25, 30 degrees in winter. So energy efficiency for households is really, really important. And if the only source of heating is basically wood, that means that the entire area, of course, is polluted. And what they did is with simple interventions, they built up competence of handy workers there to improve energy efficiency in these houses. And ADB actually also jumped in to finance then these interventions that go from the really low-hanging fruits of insulating doors and windows to the more complex ones where it's about, you know, the roof and the building materials, etc. And I think that it's important also to mention the fact that financing is so crucial for the success of this project here. Because in my eyes, this is often lacking, you know, that maybe there is the goodwill there to do something about it, but if there is no financing available, like how to proceed? Cleaning the air is not a business case.
Okay, thank you. So let's go back to Weena now. So Kun Ekachai was talking about that the issue is that Thailand, for example, buys agricultural products and from Laos and Myanmar, which are produced with burning. So how is this issue covered in the Citizen-Driven Clean Air Act? How does data disclosure and supply chain due diligence tie to this? I mean, and also tie to finance, or how could incentivize finance to improve financing schemes for cleaner supply chains?
Thanks for the question. Let me just preface this. The clean air legislation is a master legislation, right? So it's an umbrella legislation that lays out the groundwork. So it won't go, there will be and needs to be a lot of supporting legislation that comes in and supports this. So that question is important, where we're not quite there. Okay, so if, I like to use the analogy of building a house. So this legislation is building the foundation of a house. Other things that are important, it's the different rooms in the various houses that we're talking about. And that will come about when it is all well set up. Now, going back to the issue of agricultural burning, Kunegachai was very PC in his usage of words. Thailand has, this is in the public domain, Thailand has already received a lot of official complaints about human rights violation that's happened in our neighboring countries. The Human Rights Commission received that complaint a few years before COVID. It's linked to a lot of operations happening due to Thai businesses funded by Thai banks happening on the borders. The link back to the air pollution situation is that around 2019, when air quality issue really came to the fore, civil society, a lot of people literally were falling sick. People were complaining about the quality of the air. And what had happened was that a lot of the agricultural burning that happens, which is linked to contract farming operations, started moving to our bordering countries. And they happen right at the borders. So we're talking about Myanmar, we're talking about Laos, and some in Cambodia. And then there these production of mostly corn, which is part of animal feedstock, gets imported back into Thailand with zero tariff. Right. So what I'm talking about is there is a structural problem happening here that is creating the wrong incentives in terms of protecting our public health in total. And that's a big issue. And one of the, I mean, this problem is so big. I think the way to address it is not just the tripartite governments talking amongst themselves, which is not a bad start, but it needs all stakeholders at the table. And the big agro guys should be part of that discussion. I understand they actually were. I'm not so sure what the outcomes were, but they should be definitely part of it because it is their supply chain that's linked to all this. Now, going back to the question of linking it back to finance, that gets a little bit more tricky because when you're talking about more established commodities, for example, if you look at the issues of palm oil industry, there's RSPO certification. That's something that's been around for a long time. It's got a level of it's run out of Geneva. It's got operations around the world. So there are processes in place for that. There are processes in place for coffee. There's processes in place for, for different things. For example, sugarcane, although I don't think Bonsuko actually deals with the burning that happens in the sugarcane industry yet. For something like maize, which is a big problem in this part of the world, because it's part of the animal feedstock. Thailand is the world's largest producer of animal feed. Okay. I don't believe there is an actual process in place. Having said that, it does not mean that the financiers should not be held to account for this, because in terms of the due diligence, part of it is, it was particularly for the big money banks, you have to abide by environmental, social, and governance guidelines in your credit analysis. And part of it is ensuring the supply chain due diligence that you're involved with, that it doesn't involve human rights violation, doesn't involve environmental degradation, it doesn't involve things like governance issue, things like land grabs and that kind of stuff. Except we're not quite there yet. But having said that, I could share an example of how some of this has been played out in the case of China. China had since 2012-13 had dealt with the huge problems that they face with the air pollution there. And one of the things that had developed as a result of it, but this is specifically on industrial pollution, is that a group had a nonprofit group that had been working on this, had developed an app called the Blue Map app. And the Blue Map app actually takes the huge amount of data that's released by the Chinese government and amalgamates it in a way that encourages micro-reporting support from civil society. And through that, they actually have a very, very solid database of all the various industrial pollution that's happening throughout the country, which is massive, as you can imagine. And how does that all feed back to the financing aspects of things? So now when big brands go into China and they secure suppliers, they actually end up using this database as one of their supply due diligence to determine if they will sign that supply contract, because they are under obligation in their own country, in their home base, that they cannot willy-nilly sign contracts with any supplier without knowing their background in terms of these issues, right? So therefore this becomes an important base. So answering your question, you know, this entity ends up providing a very transparent and very verified ways. And that is a means for the entire loop to be linked back. And companies do see the benefit of that, because the ones who don't meet these requirements do not get their supply contracts continued. And I think on what's happening here in Thailand with animal feed, which is a bit more tricky, because it's so high up in the upstream chain of the entire food production. But having said that, you know, in December 2022, the EU do have new deforestation legislation coming up, right? Which makes companies in Europe responsible for this, for not having products on their shelves of their supermarkets that are linked to deforestation happening around the world. And a lot of the type of activities that's happening here in Thailand is linked not just to burning in agricultural fields, but also deforestation. Right, you know, getting into protected forests to expand land for a lot of these things, and so some way, somehow, there must be a means to be able to link that all up, and we'll should have an accountability from farm to fork on this. I hope that answers the question.
That's a very thorough answer. Thank you, Weena. Let's go back to Ken now. So wearing your FHI hat, in terms, what is FHI doing to, I guess, align working on improving air quality with or alongside climate action? Does the organization see this as aligned? And do you think it's fundable? I mean, we talked about the issue of finance earlier. Is that a challenge?
Right. Thank you. FHI 360. Now I'm wearing the other hat right now. For FHI 360, I think we known for as a leading development organization in the public health space. At FHI 360, I think we see the air pollution issues, not only the environmental issues, but it's probably like biodiversity issues, is the economic issues, is the social inequality issues, is the human rights issues, it's the health issue, of course. So yeah, to your first question, it's aligned with our mission, and for like among many projects that we are implementing right now in addressing the air pollution issues, one of the flagship project is the USAID clean air project in Nepal. So this is one of the largest and probably I think the main project that we are implementing in the region in Asia in addressing the air pollution issues. It's implementing at the Kathmandu Valley, the capital city of Nepal. And as you may know, Kathmandu Valley is one of the most polluted city in the world. And under this program, there are three main pillars. First, we are supporting the government of Nepal at all levels, starting from the policy formulation to the law enforcement to the implementation that influence the air quality. Second, we are improving the private sector engagement and private sector investment in the air pollution issues, and we are also supporting the local innovation like the startups in Nepal as well. And the last pillars that we are doing is toward enhancing the citizen engagement and knowledge on the air pollution through the so-called the citizen science approach. I can share with many of you later the citizen science approach, but it's one of the approach that we are using in this project. And in terms of to the for this project, we got a great support from the USAID, and we with the success of the project, we also plan to scale up the similar program in the region as well. And it's a good transition to address the second questions from Danny. Like, is it fundable? For the air pollution issues that Cosima mentioned earlier, I think we need to acknowledge the current funding gaps right now. Though the air pollution issues is known as the world's largest environmental risk factor to disease and premature death, but less than 0.1%, and you heard it correct, 0.1% of total funding, total development funding is spent on the air quality or the air pollution explicitly. So this is the huge gap that we are facing right now, and in many hotspots areas, I think there's still a lot of problem. Let's say Latin America or in Africa, for instance, around 5 to 10% of the 0.1% goes there. So I'll give the case of Nigeria, for example. In Nigeria, they only receive around, if I remember correctly, around $250,000 US from 2015 to 2020. So only $250,000 in addressing the air pollution issues, despite they experience around 70,000 deaths related to the air pollution each year. So that's a huge gaps in terms of funding. And if any of you that listening right now are wearing the funder's hat, please note that there's the huge gaps in terms of funding, and this is a huge problem that we need to address right now. Yeah, thank you.
Okay, thanks for that, Ken. I have a follow-up question actually for Cosima. So Weena mentioned the new EU deforestation law. Do you think that could be a game changer? I mean, you mentioned this issue of financing gap. I mean, will the EU, for example, work more on, I guess, trying to stop products that have deforested, I mean, it led to deforestation in it, and could it lead to improved air quality?
Yeah, that's an important question. I mean, of course, the hope is there that this law can change things. On the other hand, we have to be realistic. I mean, of course, this only applies to those exporters of Asian countries that want to import into the EU, and it also only applies to some specific agricultural product groups. And this means that, you know, not at all are the most important, you know, polluting areas covered by that. And also what I fear we will see is similar to actually what has happened in the textile industry. So with stricter legislation and also consumers pushing for more transparency along the value chain, what has happened is that the value chain itself has actually become more vague. Players have deliberately obfuscated, you know, where exactly they are sourcing from. This has led to, you know, the appearance of kind of large middlemen companies, where, you know, brands can then pretend, oh well, you know, we gave this this order of shirts to someone located in Portugal. Whereas this, you know, company then acts as a kind of run point for factories from around the world. So this is definitely something where you have to keep an eye on. And yeah, I mean, I like how Weena mentioned the fact that current activities of burning are funded by Thai banks. And I also wanted to just briefly come back to the financial sector at large, because there are high hopes, on the financial sector and, its capacity to change things. I don't want to, dash all those hopes, but I mean, I think one of the best kept secrets is actually that there is profit to be made by polluting. It's not just that there is no business case there for cleaning up your act. It's also that profits are being made by not doing so. And what investors, what financial sector actors do is they look at the risk return ratio, right? And allocate capital accordingly. So if we say that they have to, companies have to clean up their act, this means their returns get a hit. And in order to get the financial sector on board, what has to change is their risk calculation with regard to their investments. And in my opinion, really the only way to do that is through legislation. And this is where we come full circle with what you had mentioned earlier, because this is really the only way to move the equation of financial sector actors towards investing into non-polluting or less polluting companies and making, making it advantageous to be a non-polluter or a company that pollutes less. And legislation is important, but so is monitoring. So are enforcement mechanisms that directly also match the profits to be made through polluting with very high fines if you are found to be polluting. This is the only way that companies move, because of course, why should they otherwise? I mean, it's just, that's just being realistic. And so, yeah, fines need to be high, licenses need to be able to be withdrawn. This is exactly what also your example from China demonstrates. Then also the financial sector actors kind of adjust their risk return calculations accordingly. And this also has a flip side, of course, because, yeah, as I mentioned before, there's also not enough funding available for investing into cleaner air infrastructure, products, etc. And first of all, of course, comes the decarbonizations basically of all sectors. And this is where I think, yeah, like you mentioned, there is so little funding dedicated to clean air, but there is so much funding dedicated to decarbonization, right? And it's really up for companies and development financial institutions to link these two issues together, because then there's ample funding available actually. Yeah, for SMEs, I think it's also really important that there are dedicated funds available, because otherwise, yeah, as I said, I mean, there's no business case except for your own kind of business continuity is at risk if your license is withdrawn otherwise. And for this, definitely there need to be programs that let SMEs clean up their act. And the interesting thing is also, this is a problem that has been solved already, in the US, in Europe, in terms of air pollution, because yeah, 40 years ago, things looked quite different there as well. Yeah.
Okay, thank you for that excellent answer. So just following that, I'm going to open up to the whole panel now. So Cosima talked about fines, new legislation, talking about licensing. So can you take a moment to think about what would it take for the key stakeholders, corporations, organizations, funders, and governments to make the connection between climate, air, and human rights in the supply chain? And what narratives or avenues do you think would convince them to be more invested in this linkages?
There was a report that came out. It was published in The Guardian, and it was in, they calculated the number of people who have actually lives were saved in the US in 2000 as a result of the clean air initiatives that are because of the Clean Air Act in the US and the amendments that have come since. And it was calculated about 230,000 American lives have been saved as a result of that. And then they actually did a calculation of how much that pairs compared to the investments that have done to actually clean the air in the US. And they quantify it as that's 30 times, 30x the amount of investment done. So when you look at all these things and you quantify it, it is actually a no-brainer that you should clean the air, right? Because even if your business, right, not having to pay humongous amounts in terms of on health insurance for your company, for your employees, you know, your consumers not dying, therefore able to buy your products is probably a good thing. You know, and you know, for governments, yeah, your population dying, not so great in terms of, you know, the tax revenue that's coming in, right? You know, in totality, I mean, there is a huge benefit in economics terms. The term is externality. And that's anything related to the environmental issues, social issues. They are termed as something that is not calculated in your profit and loss statements. It's not in your financial statements. And therefore, it's external for the corporation. And that's exactly the role of policymakers. The role of policymakers is to internalize the externality, is to protect the public good. And sometimes I wonder if we've accidentally walked down the wrong path. There was one question that a reporter asked one of my team members the other day when we were running an exhibition right now called the Nose Exhibition. And one of the questions that came from a green news agency, which surprised me, was the question was, what can governments do to support civil society in cleaning the air? And I thought, oh, dear Lord, you flipped it around. This is the role of governments. We're only involved because you're not doing your job. I'm sorry, right? It's not that way. We're carrying this heavy burden on your behalf because that's the role of governments. That's why you're in power right now. Policymakers, ministries, all of you, right? That's what you're supposed to be doing. And that's exactly what Cosima is talking about, which is, how do you internalize these externalities? That's specifically the role of policy. And it starts to come from legislation. It has to come from implementing it. It has to come from getting everybody involved. We're cognizant that the issues are complex. And therefore, one of the key things this legislation does do is bring everybody to the fore, because we are cognizant that it requires a lot of skills from across multiple discipline. It public health expert, you need your air pollution specialist, you need your vehicle experts, you need your building experts, you need your industry experts, you need your extractive industry experts, you need agriculture experts. I mean, the field is massive, and we are cognizant that not every government agency will have people with that skill set, but as a society we do. And so one of the things that we've brought to the fore in this legislation is the concept of co-management. And that is co-management between civil society. And when you take off your hat, it doesn't matter who you're working for. We are all part of civil society. If you have the skill set required to help push this agenda forward, that's who is needed on the table. And so that's what we're trying to say, is we're trying to bring people to the fore who can actually help solve this problem. And in terms of the polluter pay principle, we've brought it in through the usage of a clean air fund, where a portion it is actually funded from an increase in excise tax, which is imposed on importation of goods and services that are linked to polluting activities. So the way the way it's done is just if you don't have the willingness to want to change your operations in a way that is environmentally friendly, that's fine. You take on that cost. It's a cost of doing business. If you do, this fund can be used to help subsidize that cost. It is also used to address things like environmental justice issues, because right now, as individuals, we have no means to figure out what's happening, like what's the source of the air pollution that we're breathing in. And it's sad that just by breathing, it's the same as you smoking, right? Because, and the other bigger part of it, which is, it is a huge structural problem. And one of the issues too is, I think governments need to be account, but also as global citizens, as globally as an international community, don't forget there is a very logical reason why Asia Pacific is the region that has the worst air pollution. We are the factories of a lot of places, and we're also the place where we're the most populous region in the world, right? So from a business perspective, It's a wonderful region to move your factories, and your factory is next to your consumers. Is there any reason why China has terrible air quality, why India has terrible air quality? Of course. And therefore, what I'm saying is there needs to be responsibility across as well for that. You can't just say, okay, not in my backyard, let's clean. I mean, look at the air quality map and you'll see air quality is usually pretty good in the global north, right? You can't say, hey, I've cleaned it up because I moved the factory somewhere else. And now it's your problem, folks. We cleaned it up 40 years ago. Now it's your issue. It's like, hell no. No. So I think as don't forget, this is the same stratosphere that we all breathe. We are on the same environment that we're all breathing in. And in California, actually, LA had spent 30 years trying to clean up their air. And they're very advanced to what they've done. But they did find that there was a residual amount. They couldn't figure out the actual source apportionment. And so they took a lot of effort to try to figure out where it come from, because if you don't know where the source is, it's very difficult to actually address it. And they did a fair amount of study, and they found out it came from China. So that is to say, we breathe the same air, and this stuff does really travel around the world. Right. So hopefully some way, somehow, somebody who's very good at communicating these things might help make people understand it. I think for me, one of the sad part that happened, I mean, this is the worst air quality episode that Thailand has faced since data has been calculated in terms of for PM 2.5 that started in 2011. This is the worst air pollution episode we have had in this country. It was really sad because up north, just a few months ago, the newborn baby ward in Chiang Rai had air quality index indoor at 400. Outside was 800. Safety levels for human health is 50. Okay, so that's a huge toll, right? And when you were talking about a country where that's the type of air that a newborn is breathing, what does it say about the future of this country? Right? What's happening to these kids? Don't forget, this stuff affects them. Their organs are just developing, and affects them every organ of their body, including their brains. Our education is reduced by at least a year, if not more, and the impact is permanent, right? So when governments don't focus on this, I think it's extremely myopic, because you cannot talk about economic growth in the future or business when this is the future of what you're looking at.
Thanks, Weena. Kun Ekachar, Ken, do you want to add anything?
Yes, please, maybe a little bit. I agree with Kun Veena also. But in our team opinion, so we would like to work in two ways, like a top down, like Kun Veena said, work with the government or any the state member. That's like a top down. But another way around is like we work from the bottom up. We would like to raise the awareness of the people. If we have like a really strong voice that is really a concern point, that clean air is need for us, really need for us. So if we can have this kind of maybe some campaign, we try to tell the story that, okay, the dirty air should not like have in our world anymore. We should have only clean air, something like this. But we try to find that story. I would like to give you the example. It's like the foam box for food, right? Before, I remember at first, we made a campaign that, okay, if we use this foam box, it will cause the environmental issue like this, whatever, is a waste. But nobody concerned about this. But after that, many years later, so another thing, like another study happened, it's like if we use this foam box with hot food, so it can cause cancer to the people, to the human. Humans start to concern. So it's gonna affect the market of this foam box. They have to change their business model. Maybe foam box is not anymore. Need to change to another kind of box that we see in the market right now. So if we can find this turning point, maybe it's gonna like have the effective way or solution that can turn from the bottom up So we turn from the market to the policy. Yeah.
Okay, thank you. Do you want to add anything, Ken?
Yeah, sure. Maybe something very short. Just like one minor comment. Is like my personal concern. As I'm wearing the private sector hats on the renewable energy. I think there was the hot debates on like shifting from mining fossil fuel to mining mineral resources, like turning from the fossil fuel industry into like the electric vehicles, into the renewable energy. We know that there's like massive amount of mineral resources that we would need for that. I think like we should be concerned, and we should take our mental note on that as well. Like should not be like shifting from mining fossil fuel into mining the mineral resources. And we know for sure that the mining mineral resources involved with conflict groups, involving with the child laborers, involving with the environmental issue as well. So we are not like trying to like escape from the frying pans into the fire. I think that's one of the concern that I want to like voice out to the government as well. Thank you.
Okay, thanks. I could ask some more questions, but I think it's better right now to open it up to the audience. If you have any questions or comments, floor is open.
Hi guys, thank you for this. So I'm Sara. I'm from Pakistan. I work on climate change law and policy. And I know you are insisting that, and I sort of agree with it, because it's the basis to have legislation on air pollution in place. So Pakistan has one of the worst air qualities in the world. We've been struggling with it for the last 10 odd years now. And I'm from Lahore. We're a smog capital. We have policies. We've had policies for a while. This year we've also got a national climate change, a national clean air plan out, a policy out, but we cannot seem to implement it. We are struggling so much with that. And one of the bigger reasons is to get an average Pakistani to sort of understand that air pollution is a big issue. Air pollution is affecting your health. And no matter how many stats and how many scientific sort of, evidence, how much of it we put out, people don't register it. It's not being internalized. And then, of course, we're getting a lot of businesses don't want to jump on board. They'll pay off their fine, or they'll just sort of have an inroad with the government, how it works. So I would love to have some kind of, what are your thoughts on getting the implementation in place, especially in a developing sort of agricultural economy?
Because you specifically talked about legislation. Yeah, I think one unique aspect of what we've done in this legislation, I talked about co-management. So civil society sits at 50% of policy making boards, and at the regulation board and at implementation. And we also have provincial levels as well. So that's a big key changer, right? Because it's not just governments and big business going into cahoots and saying, hey, I rub your back, you rub my back, right? I think, so bringing that to fore, I think is critical to get change. It is, as you probably know quite well, one of the premise of environmental legislation. It's not a command control, right? It's building incentive structure. And that's what we've done. So with this fund, we're saying to, hey, big business, there is this fund to help you transition. You're going to have to transition anyway, by the way. If you want to still continue, as Cosimo was talking, if you still want to continue with getting into your high value markets, you're going to have to play ball, right? And the world is a lot more transparent. Kind of difficult to fake it to make it. And so this will help you in that transition. If you don't want to, that's fine. But your cost of doing business is going to be higher. Right. So sometimes people say, oh, if you do this, cost is going to go up. No, cost will not go up, because for the ones who want to transition, their operating costs is going to be higher. With the same margin, they're going to be able to sell products at levels that are more achievable for the consumers. Right. And so the market will take care of itself. And that's how the way we've actually done it. We're cognizant of a lot of issues in a developing country context. And the thing no one talks about, the elephant in the room, is the issue of corruption, right? Which is, it is part of the way things do work. But having said that, that's how we're addressing this. No, we're a mixture. So we have industrial, we have agriculture. That's why we were talking a lot of agriculture. I think agriculture for us is a big aggravator. So in the early parts of the year, so starting second half of November all the way up to literally only a few weeks ago. I mean, the terrible air quality if you're in Bangkok, and particularly in northern Thailand, is coming from burning of agricultural fuels. So burning of waste, burning of and sometimes it's double. So burning of waste to get into the field. So if it's sugarcane, they do it twice. Get into there, cut the thing, then get rid of the agricultural waste. Maize is a problem because there's a lot of growth, a lot of corn grown on very steep terrain, on mountainous terrain. They shouldn't be out there, by the way. So burning to get into the crops is a huge problem. And you can't get tractors in there. It's so steep. Right. I think one of the critical thing, and you touched upon it, is like, how do you make people aware of how bad this is? I think at a certain level, people are aware, right? They are aware this ain't great for my health. But I think that the thing that they have, and a lot of small scale farmers in Thailand say the same thing. It's like, please give us a solution where we will not starve if we don't burn, because and it is a structural problem, because the lowest cost to dealing with agricultural waste is a matchstick. So how do you change that? That's where policy needs to come in. That's when the big businesses need to be incentivized to do the right thing, whether it's through legislation or through incentive structure.
Do any other panelists want to add anything here? Sure.
For the our program, the USAID program in Nepal, in terms of raising the public awareness, one of the campaign that we were running just a few months ago is that we install the so-called the artificial lung, like in front of the Ministry of Health in Nepal, like 2 meter high, made of the HEPA filter, and after like 5 or 7 days, it turned black. And when people like walk by and they see like this lung turn back within like 5 days, they kind of understand that, oh, this could happen to their health, their body as well. So that would be one of the example.
We also we have a nose exhibition right now. It's happening at the BACC, and we work with an amazing artist. So what we do is we use a very sort of fun way. So we've got huge, I mean, literally you could sit on it. It's huge nose exhibition. It's 13 of the noses, but it's linked to a vacuum cleaner. And the point is, if we don't deal with air pollution, our body will be like a vacuum cleaner, sucking this all in. Once it's come in, it doesn't come out. So that's another way. And there's an amazing art exhibition, if you want to use art as a way to push people to understand it, done out of an artist in London, where actually he creates, I think Lahore might be one of the cities, he creates the air quality, and it's called, I think it's called the air pollution pod, and he recreates it. And I think a lot of times people don't understand something because it's not real to them yet. And what they do is he's created it. I think it went to maybe COP26, 27, so many COPs. But one of them where they actually got the policymakers to go in and experience what is air quality like in Lebanon? What is air quality like in Kathmandu? What is it like in Lahore? What is it like in Islamabad? You know, and that feeling. Yeah.
Okay, thanks. Any other questions? Sir, Kerry? Yeah.
Yep. Hi, I'm Kerry. I'm a teacher at the International School Bangkok, and part of my role is like environmental coordinator. And you guys are talking a lot about raising awareness, things like that. So I'm just wondering, where do you see the role of where students could actually help? And the reason why I ask is because I've been involved in programs before with students at my school, but also we have a connection to many other of the top schools in Bangkok region. And 13 years ago, we started the Bangkok Service Conference. And so it hasn't missed a year for 13 years, and it's coming up again in September. And I've already mentioned many of you guys to the panel that's calling in the keynote speakers. But what I'm pushing for there is that maybe we get the students from each of these schools to really push a common campaign. So it's not all individual campaigns, but it's something where we could work perhaps with you guys on. And the parents of these students are also the ones probably that own some of these businesses that you're talking about. But the idea is that if we get a lot of these well-off students who, most are from this area, and getting them involved, getting various schools involved, and getting their parents involved, and bringing in those companies, perhaps it's a way of increasing the awareness. And I wouldn't want to hold it just to those schools, but what I was thinking was that's a starting point of increasing the awareness and getting perhaps some of the companies involved. But I was just wondering what your thoughts are on that and how you might see that being an advantage.
You're speaking to the choir. I love the idea. We've talked about it. I think children, the youth is definitely a very important segment because it is their future, right? They're going to be reading this stuff a lot longer than the rest of us. I think they can be really, really important change agents to push this forward. I think there's this girl who she was shortlisted for the Earthshot Prize Award. A few years ago. She's from India. Amazing girl, 14-year-old, pushing on solutions. She was at this big event and she said, I'm a girl from India, but I'm also a girl from Earth. And that's why I care about this. And I think children can be huge change agent, and especially the ones that go to ISB and these schools, definitely given who they're given their lineage.
For my opinion, I think we need to separate into two sections of the kid, because I think you from the international school, right? Yeah. We need to understand that the character of the student or kid or family that go into the international school is totally different from the family who go to the public school. And the majority who cause the air pollution is not this group. Maybe I am wrong. I don't know. Okay, maybe international school is just a small community, but it's good to have an idea like this. But if you can expand or share your know-how or your course or whatever activity that happened in the international school to the public school, so yeah, maybe we have a bigger impact. And it's a good chance for us also because it's their future. And then when we can buy one kid already, by their heart already, it's affect another two. It's the parents, mother and father. It's the whole family. So if we can do with the kid, so it's going to be more impact also. Yeah. Thank you.
Could I just follow up with that? I wouldn't want to be exclusively international school. I would definitely want public schools involved, but I'm just offering access to the forum that I already have with about 300 students from about 15 international schools coming together. But I do know for a fact that many of these students, their parents are actually the ones that run some of these companies that you would want to make some of these changes for sure. And yeah, while I would like to get the public schools involved as well, it often is the international schools that have been trained a bit different, where they are more prone to speaking out. And a lot of times, and this is, I don't mean this as any offense to public schools in Thailand, but it seems to be more like follow the line, sort of don't step out of your I guess your realm of where you're allowed to speak. Whereas in international school, students often do speak up more and will fight more for that. And we're all breathing that same air. So that's why I would, advocate to at least start there and see where it expands. So.
Carrie, so I don't know if I've shared this with you, but the alternative schools in Thailand have been really proactive in the space. And what they've done, these are more Buddhist schools, right? Middle income families. But I think their approach, which is really cool, is they've actually brought the children into the fore and the parents as well. So the parents set up all the various like collectively, how are we going to manage this, right? Like what policies in place for the school, right? Some of them have developed their own apps to monitor the air quality, develop their own air monitoring systems for the school. And I think the other thing that's really cool is they've actually brought into the curriculum of the schools a lot of the air air quality issues into the science classes. And the kids have been involved in figuring out the sourcing of the air pollution that they, in their area, going to government ministries, talking to them. And some of them have actually solicited funding to develop their own air quality monitoring systems. So I think in that way that they've been quite incredible change agents. Unfortunately, I think it's only the alternative schools that have done that. But if international schools can get involved in that, I think that would be a good way forward.
Yeah, we actually, our school spent millions. I know, like we have filters in our rooms now. So our air quality inside is down to like 0 to 1 or 2 every day. But kids can't go out for recess and things like that. But I mean, we're the rich school, we're spoiled, and it's not fair for everybody else to have to breathe this air. So, an expensive school can afford these solutions, but that's not exactly a solution for everyone. But we do monitor all of that stuff. So we have the data that you guys could use. But anyway, I guess where I'm hoping to go forward is if there is a solution out there or a movement, at least one thing I can offer is to bring a large group of this population together and to help expand that movement. And I noticed today on your nose campaign, that was Maria. That was the model in your photos. And she's also a former student that does all kinds of fighting for environmental rights. So there's also that, group of people that we can bring in that can make this a bigger event.
Can I add to that? Can I build on that? So I do a lot of climate advocacy in Pakistan, and I run a couple of climate advocacy groups. And part of that is going to private schools and sort of talking to these kids and getting them to make climate change a personal thing for them. And then subsequently, I realized that the children would go home and sort of create like a racket, and it was the best way to get access to the parents. Otherwise, talking to a certain generation it's like talking to deaf ears. It's not, they don't internalize climate change the way the students do, especially if they're from the privileged class. So it's a great idea. I think definitely go for it.
Okay, yeah, thank you. Maybe you guys can continue the discussion afterward. Any other questions? Oh yeah, sure, go ahead.
Could you explain what would be the ideal solution to the problem? Because we're talking about getting people involved into the issue, but what is the real solution? What would the farmers should not do? They should not burn. So if they don't burn, what should they do?
So you're talking particularly about agriculture?
I'm talking specifically about agriculture,
Okay.
about the issue in Thailand. Yeah.
Okay, great, thanks.
So I just briefly want to come in, and then I will hand gladly over to Rowena, because she's the absolute expert on this. I think this part of the problem in Thailand is part of a so-called wicked problem, right? Because in the end, it's really a poverty problem and an exploitation problem. And it's super difficult to tackle this kind of, directly. But what we already have, and I think this is really something of value, is the experience of the Western world. And I know that of course some of the polluting industries have shifted to Asia, but Germany is a country where we have 20% of the GDP still coming from manufacturing sector. And you can say a lot of things about Germany and their environmental progress, but at least they are in a situation right now where the air is definitely breathable, where you can drink from most water streams, and where soil pollution is also not a big issue. And that is with 20% of the GDP resulting from manufacturing. I mean, it's still the 4th largest manufacturing industry in the world, even though, of course, its 5% contribution to the world global output pales against China's 25%. But still, it's possible to solve the industrial part of the contribution to air pollution. And I think that's really important to keep top of mind, that this is a problem that is already solved, and it's really about doing the right steps, having the right legislation in place, and then continue on that path. But now on to Weena with the wicked problem.
Yeah, so I to your question, Fred, I think that's where the legislation comes in, right? It's trying to create the right incentives. So for example, in the agricultural industry, one of the things that people say, why don't you mechanize? Mechanization is extremely expensive. Most farmers can't afford it, and they shouldn't be affording it, to be honest. For example, we went to the agricultural fields and we saw that in the sugarcane industry, the harvesting period is only 6 to 8 weeks max. Makes absolutely no sense. Why should you be indebted for equipment for 52 weeks in a year for the next 5 to 7 years when you're only using it for 8 weeks maximum per year? Right. So right now, as Seema is saying, it is an issue with poverty. It is an issue with, honestly, it's slavery. It's a slavery system, right? So the burden is fallen onto the weakest part of society to handle it, which it should not. So with this, what we're hoping that it will create is the right incentive structure to have, for example, a leasing system for a lot of the mechanization solutions, if that's a viable solution, or any other solutions out there as an alternative to the burning. There's a ton of technology, whether it's Germany, where it's the US, to deal with all this, Australia, there's a ton. It's just that right now there is no incentive to bring it in, or the cost of bringing in a lot of these technology is going to be slapped with some high importation costs, taxes and stuff like that. So we are trying to solve those big bottlenecks to resolve this issue. People talk about, carbon credits and all this sort of stuff. These are all solutions, but unless and until you have the system in place to support these things, to make them viable, it will be hard for them to actually roll out. So I hope I answered that question. If not,
May I add a little bit? Okay. If we're talking about the agriculture.
Farmer, I'm Thai.
Okay.
I live in a remote area. What solution can I get?
Okay. Where do you live again? In the north. Okay. Actually, we have really like a good practice actually related to the agriculture business. But the final answer, this is maybe my personal opinion, is can be like sustainable farming or sustainable like agriculture. But this solution is take time, at least 10 years. So the farmer can wait or not. But in between year 1 to year 9, so maybe government should have something to like subsidize or do something during the way to make it achieve at the end. Because last 2 weeks that I told that we have a workshop right between these 3 countries. We also bring the participants from Myanmar, Thai, and Laos go to the highland agriculture in Chiang Mai. That's a royal project. Okay, we don't talk about money because royal project have a lot of money, right, to drive that kind of project. But for the practice, it's practical, but take time and need money to drive it also. But it's kind of like a really long-term plan. So for my opinion, if we want to solve this problem today, so we need to go for sustainable farming. And we will see the impact in the next 10 years. Yeah.
Okay, thank you. We have time for maybe one more question. Does anybody? Oh yeah, go ahead.
Hello. Okay. So I'm Alicia. I'm from Indonesia. And as you know, I don't know, in Indonesia, our air pollution is bad, like super bad. You won't even see any like blue sky. It's almost impossible, like once in a while. But as you were talking about young people earlier, like students, changing the mindset of someone isn't easy, and putting regulation in place also isn't easy, right? So you were talking about agriculture, things like that, solution. But what about like in terms of advocacy? How do we change someone's mindset? It's easy to make campaign here and there, but sometimes people just like, they see it, they hear about it, and then that's it. They don't really make a difference. Sometimes people, they know that Jakarta has one of the worst pollution, but most people don't want to do anything about it. The government like place certain rules, like let's say they did put in place like they did this thing where with the plate number, every like if it's like on the 5th, they have to, let's say on the like the date, yeah, let's say on the 5th, let's say they would we need a plate that ends with like 5th or 7th or whatever the number. They did that in place, so transportation not so much on the road, right? Trying to decrease transportation, because transportation also is one of the biggest effect for air pollution. But what I'm trying to say is, for a young generation like me, what's the method for us to actually make people be involved and engage, not just telling them, oh, air pollution is real, but is there anything like any activities that maybe you can recommend, or any solution for young people like us at the moment?
That's a good question. Thanks.
Mhm.
You come from a country that has a great track record of doing that.
Yeah.
So as people may know, Indonesia actually sued the government and a lot of the ministers for inaction in not cleaning the air in Jakarta.
Mhm.
The government appealed, taken to the highest court. The highest court threw out that appeal. So the Ibu Kota coalition, the Clean Air Coalition of Indonesia, I think has an amazing story of how they galvanize people using through the court system, which I think is great, because whether you sue or the threat of suing is extremely powerful. They were able to work in tandem in moving this. And I think when I spoke to them, the coalition, and they shared some of their success stories, I think one of the things that they did, which was really, really good, was tie that personal story to each other. When they went, it was a class action suit. So they actually found people who are victims, whether you're a young mom with a young child who has chronic asthma, you've got an aging parent, or there's so many different cases, right? If you're active runners, they're active people in Thailand who now have advanced stage lung cancer. So they actually lined up all these people, all these different cases, and I think they've actually matched it out with the actual people in court, which is trying to say, if you touch people at the heartstrings and you say, forget who you are, I'm talking to you as a father, I'm talking to you as a mother, I'm talking to you as a child of an aging parent, right? Or as somebody who's active and has a friend who's in their 20s. We have a 27-year-old doctor who's now suffering from advanced stage lung cancer, and all he did wrong was exercise. There are so many cases like that. So they were able to actually move the needle, and Indonesia did it so well. Actually, we were very impressed with the way it's moved. And I think the highest court threw out the appeal end of last year. So the government actually has no choice. They're already backed up to have to try to do something. So I think there are probably more cases of how Indonesia did it right than there would be here, unfortunately.
May I add something, please? Okay, about the changing the mindset. I think it depends on the age, generation. Maybe your generation, my generation, or kid at the school, it's totally different approach. Maybe for the kid, you have like another approach. For me, I have son already, so I care about him, 9 years old boy. So I need to think like worry about him more than myself. But I don't know, maybe your generation, let me guess, around 20 something. Fashion, maybe. If you can like change this generation mindset, like I have to green fashion or something, might be possible. And then it's gonna affect the product. Okay, product have to be clean label, and then clean label, so the factory have to be like really clean technology, whatever. They have a measure to do, like make it clean to get the green label. So in my opinion, it's like it's depend on the generation or age that you can have a different approach to you, me, or kid at the school.
I just want to add, you can run like boycott campaigns, certain products. For example, the companies that are most responsible for air pollution, try to target them, could be one other possibility. Let's quickly wrap up because we're running out of time. Maybe each of you could just give a quick, idea of what's the way forward. What do you think should be done about this issue? Just, 30 seconds or so.
Start off so quickly, ran out of time. We have a campaign right now on our website. Actually, we've ran it for 5 years. And it's now on our website, started on the Change platform. We've migrated it to our website. It is for citizens to the short video, explainer video. We have a link to, we have the UN Repertoire for Human Rights and the Environment. Dr. David Ward actually provide his endorsement to the draft of the legislation. This is something, I mean, it's all very extremely informal, obviously, because it's just a petition online. Currently, we have about 59,000 people, extremely low, 10,000 a year. But I think based on how things move on the clean air movements around the world, it's actually the voice of the people. And we're trying to say, people, let's change the voices of complaints to become a voice for change. I mean, we want 1 million people. And it's critical right now in Thailand because the new government, whoever's going to be in power, is going to be forming. And if 1 million people say, hey, we're keeping an eye out on you for this, and this is something we demand, I think that is extremely powerful. No one wants to disregard their constituents. And remember, the US clean air movement, it sounds wonderful on paper, and it was wonderful. But remember, before it even got to where it is today, I think the statistics is like 20 million people walk the streets. I mean, it didn't come easy, no government's going to give it to you in a silver platter. So what I think is important is people saying that this is about me, and collective action, I think, is critically important. So if you can all help each other on Thailand, it's called thailandcan.org. We completely leverage off Obama, by the way. Yes, we can. Yeah, that's why we call ourselves this, by the way. So if you can help get the word out, I think that would be fantastic. Thank you.
Thank you. Yeah, difficult to build on this. Maybe just as a quick thought. So we talk a lot about crises, right? Even about polycrises, like several crises coming at the same time: democracy, climate change, pollution, etc. But I think it's also important that we kind of shift to the other side and shift into solution finding mode, because to many of these crises, to the polycrisis, we do have also the approach of multi-solving, right? So, for example, decarbonization takes away 50% of the air pollution issue globally. We can just state it as a fact. That's one way, one easy win, something that we are planning to do anyways, unless the agenda gets derailed. And so it's really important to also be clear also in our language with this, because there's huge interest in making these tasks and all these crises separate, and also kind of making them unsolvable. And I do admit, there are wicked problems there, but there are also solutions that kind of pave the way to a cleaner, more sustainable world that also add value in terms of well-being of people. And I think that's as a kind of hopeful last word from me, although I'm also partly jaded, but I do think it's just important to keep this in mind. There's a way out.
Okay, thank you.
Based on the GIZ project that work on the air pollution right now is still under developing proposal stage. So we still need your support, your information, your help that can give us any information that really useful for our next project for 5 years in the future. And then during this, I think we have like 7 or 8 months left to create a new project. So we need your support, and we hope that we can exchange later also. Thank you.
Okay, thank you.
All right. For me, just to build on Rina's point earlier, I think what we need in terms of the current coalitions from the new government is that I think we need only one responsible governmental body who responsible for this climate and clean air problem, because right now they are involved like many ministry, like many Ministry of Interior, Ministry of Energy, Ministry of Health, like essentially like every ministry, and when there is a problem, only like finger pointings and no one's responsible for anything. So I think what we would need is that like one form of the governing bodies that responsible for this particular problem. I think that would be helpful.
Sorry, and that's already in the clean air legislation, by the way.
Okay, thank you. Just before we wrap up, this conversation will actually continue tomorrow evening. It's also a shameless plug because I'm one of the speakers, but at the Foreign Correspondence Club of Thailand, Move Forward, Ministry of Public Health, one of Weena's colleagues and I will be speaking. So hope to see you all there. But let's thank all the speakers for their time and their excellent remarks.